Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. We are back live and direct at the second session of the Zero Dose Learning Hub webinar series. I am Margaret Wisdom, your moderator for today's session. Before we officially begin, let me give you a brief overview of what to expect in today's discussions. We have a lineup of esteemed speakers who will delve into crucial themes. First, we'll explore the intersection of religion and immunization in Nigeria, aiming to debunk myths and uncover realities. Following that, we'll shift our focus to community engagement strategies aimed at improving routine immunization coverage and reducing zero-dose children. Our speakers bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the table, and we anticipate engaging and insightful discussions throughout the webinar. So without further ado, let's kickstart our discussions with some opening remarks. Up next is Dr. Yahya Mohammed, the project coordinator for the Zero Dose Learning Hub Nigeria project at AFINET. Dr. Yahya, the floor is yours for the opening.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, colleagues, depending on which part of the world you are joining us. I'm happy to welcome all of you to the second webinar series of the Zero Dose Learning Hub. On behalf of the regional coordinator of AFINET Nigeria, which is now the AFINET West Africa, Dr. Patrick Umbuku, I wish to welcome all of you to the second webinar series, the Zero Dose Learning Hub, the Vaccine Alliance. We received technical and financial support to primarily have a framework for the country in Nigeria, so that we can be able to promptly generate evidence on strategies that can be used to better identify community wherever they live. In Nigeria, we are operating the Zero Dose Learning Hub as a consortium together with the Africa Health Budget Network, who are our consortium partner. A similar activity exists in Mali, Uganda, and Bangladesh, our road supervision and technical guidance partners, which is being headed by the JSI-led consortium. The aim of this webinar series is findings from our rapid assessment, which showed that there are some facilitators to immunization in Nigeria. And if you remember the last webinar, the first webinar we had was basically to look at insecure areas and better reach children in these insecure zones. Now, today, we are looking at a topic that is very controversial and not very easy going for most of participants because of its sensitivity. And that is why we want to unravel the religious misconceptions, and so that we can be able to better reach the unreached children. On behalf of the AFINET AHBN consortium, I wish to welcome all of you to this webinar series. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yahya, for your opening remarks. We also have with us today Dr. Heidi Reynolds. She is a senior specialist evaluation and learning at Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. She will be sharing with us some brief updates. Dr. Reynolds, you have the floor for your welcome remarks.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. And thank you, Dr. Yahya and Margaret, for your invitation to be able to do some opening remarks. And thank you also and welcome to the second Zero Dose webinar series, Religion and Immunization in Nigeria, Myths and Realities. Personally, I am really looking forward to this discussion as it is a topic I want to learn more about myself. And thank you very much to AFINET and the African Health Budget Network for organizing it. And thank you to Professor Manga, Dr. Fowotade, and Dr. Aliu for agreeing to present and to share your wisdom. As Ms. Wisdom said, I am Heidi Reynolds. I lead the Learning Hub initiative work at Gavi, and I work very closely with my colleague Gustavo Carrera, who also leads Gavi's Zero Dose Learning Agenda. I want to just say a few words about the Learning Hub initiative. At Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, this is a new initiative for our 5.0 strategic period. And the Alliance acknowledged that we do not have all the answers to questions about how to reach communities who have been systematically missed for generations and how to bring them into the health system toward full immunization and into primary health care services. Thus, the Learning Hub approach is designed to support that learning. We have a set of learning priorities. And as Dr. Yahaya mentioned, we have the Learning Hubs housed in not only in Nigeria, but in Mali, Bangladesh, and Uganda. And it's being implemented with local partners in support of national learning agendas. The Learning Hub is an important opportunity to regularly convene partners and build the evidence base about what works to reach zero-dose children and missed communities, and ensure that that evidence is used to further strengthening program implementation for routine immunization and to reach those zero-dose children. And this webinar is a perfect example of that. I would like to point you to a resource that is a website that is available. It's zdlh.gavi.org, and I can put that in the chat. It has several resources related to zero dose and the Identify, Reach, Monitor, Measure, and Advocate, or IRMA framework. But it also has more information about the learning hubs and their findings. So for example, Dr. Yahaya mentioned the rapid assessment, and those results would be posted there shortly. And in May, at the end of this month, we're expecting summaries of progress to be available at that website. But even as we wait for those materials, there's quite a rich information that is available. And I just want to underscore one more time that this is a great opportunity to bring together other voices into this discussion around how to reach zero-dose children with immunization and bring them into primary health care. It is a learning hub. It's meant to function that way as a hub, and it's so important to be able to share that learning. So I will stop there because I want to hear what our presenters have to say, and thank you all for joining us today. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Our first theme explores the intersection of religion and immunization in Nigeria. We'll start with insights from the Islamic perspective. We have with us Professor Mohammed Manga, who is a Muslim practitioner. He's a consultant, clinical microbiologist, and provost of the College of Medical Sciences, Gombe State University, Nigeria. Professor Manga, you're up next, and you have 15 minutes for your presentation.
All right, thank you, Margaret. And let me start. Okay, I think I'm not enabled to share my slides. You have to stop sharing for me to do so. But while waiting for, yeah. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Professor Manga, please go ahead.
Yes, so thank you very much for this.
Please go ahead, sir.
Can you see me now? Can you see the slides? All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we can.
Yes. Let me start by appreciating Affinet and the organizers specifically for giving me this opportunity, and also appreciate the attendees and other stakeholders for the support in getting this whole exercise a success. I'm going to speak from the Islamic perspective on the influence of religion on immunization practices in Nigeria, myths and realities. Now, the reason why this title is very important, particularly in the context of immunization in Nigeria, is something similar to other places, but most importantly, we need to understand the supremacy of religion among believers. So anybody that is a believer and practitioner of any religion takes that to be the highest and the apex. And so that means any other thing that is coming must conform entirely with the dictates of that religion. And so in that case, this is very important. So for the Islamic religion, ordinarily there shouldn't be any problem because Islam and health, are not in any way having any conflicts. But for some reasons, we have those issues. And so that is part of the reason why we need to discuss this as part of this webinar Learning Hub series. The infectious diseases as a whole are very important healthcare concerns globally. And because of the availability of vaccines for the prevention and control of those diseases, it means they shouldn't be a problem. But because of the complexity and the multidisciplinary context in the vaccine administration, it means everybody must be brought and be on the same page. And that usually is as a result of the background misinformation and misinterpretation of many preventive measures, which are not very much unusual with many things that are not readily very much okay for many people. So with that, we have a very important role to be played by religion and religious scholars in enlightening the society, because whatever it's something to do with religion, even if it is not directly religion or something that is directly worship, many followers or adherents of those religions tend to listen more to the clerics and scholars in that religion. And so that means we need to pay attention to that. So that is like giving a background as to why this topic is very important. But before we go deeper, we need to remember that microorganisms are existing, and we have different groups of microorganisms. We have bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi. And these microorganisms generally have been in existence long before plants and animals on this planet. And so in essence, the presence of these microorganisms predates the presence of plants and animals. And even though they are many in terms of population, they far outnumber the plants and animals together combined on this planet. And however, very few of them are responsible for diseases and can be amenable to certain infection prevention and control measures, including vaccines generally. So in essence, if we understand and agree to the fact that not all these microorganisms can cause infections and not all of them are associated with infectious diseases, it means there has to be an interplay between the infectious agent itself, the host, and the environment for a disease to occur. And it is this interplay that provides avenue for interventions, including vaccine itself. And so what we are discussing today basically is going to be between the infectious agent and the host. And in between them, you will have the vaccine, which is supposed to provide that breakage in this chain of transmission, as we can see. So the chain of transmission of infectious agents, it's like a spectrum of events or activities that entails the movement of microorganisms from wherever they are to get to a susceptible host through a portal of entry and eventually result into an infectious process. And knowing and having, broad information about this is the basis on which most infection prevention and control measures are built, including the immunization itself. And so immunization or vaccine administration is one of the measures. And I'll say that at this point, this is like at a point of the susceptible host, as we can see. So that point where we see the susceptible host is the point where you actually improve and expand or boost the immunity of the susceptible host such that you now have a barrier between that host and the microorganism that may likely get into his body to establish the infections. And so it is very clear that vaccines are established infection prevention and control measures, and they play a role in breaking the chain of transmission of infections. So because of that multidisciplinarity and the fact that microorganisms are ubiquitous and they are everywhere, And microorganisms that are in the environment or are in the animal population can have impact into the human population. It means it cannot be a one-sided approach. So everybody must be brought together if we have to fight that. And that is the basis on which the One Health concept was conceptualized and is now a universally approved approach globally for the transdisciplinary approach to prevention and control of infectious agents. And so that definition is actually been expanded, even though traditionally is restricted to human, animal, and population health practitioners. But it is now something that indirectly incorporates all other professionals that may not even be directly healthcare professionals. So, and it is in this context that we now have to bring in Islamic religious scholars in this context and other professionals in prevention and control of infectious agents. And that is now what will lead us to having this kind of meeting point between the Islamic religion, the health and medicines, and the vaccines, because they revolve and also interrelate with each other continuously. Because Islamic religion pays special and medicines, and by extension infections. And if you're talking about infections and also talking about the prevention and control of infections, then definitely vaccines must be very, very prominent in this context. And so now, if we go back to the basis of the Islamic religion itself, the objectives of the Islamic law in the context of that religion is to prevent all forms of harms and also ensure all forms of benefits that will now accrue to any human being or even animals and other creatures. That is a universal concept in the religion. And going back to many verses and prophetic sayings and deeds, hadiths of the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, you realize that these are things that are very, very clear from different angles. So the goals intended by Islamic law is to realize benefits for mankind from anywhere. And that is why this verse in the Holy Quran says, we have not sent you, that is the Prophet Muhammad, but not as a mercy for the universe. So that kind of mercy will not allow a religion to encourage or allow the adherents to be harmed by microorganisms and discourage any form of intervention that will free them from that kind of harm. So all that is there in the religion is to ensure benefits and prevent all forms of harms. So if we look at Islam, we now have to see whether it's synonymous or is in conflict with infection prevention and control. And going back to the concepts from the spiritual context of Islam, cleanliness of the heart and mind is the basis on which you build all other things. But the cleanliness of the body and other measures that will ensure that the body is prevented from all forms of harms and diseases, but most importantly, in our context here, now infectious agents, is something that we'll know that it's actually very clear that the Islamic religion allows for interventions and measures that will prevent religious adherents from all forms of harms. And that includes, bathing, cleaning the hair, teeth, nails, circumcision, and cleaning of clothes and the environment. All these are there in the different sayings and deeds of the Prophet and also the different verses of the Quran. Like circumcision, even though it is religious that you must circumcise male adherents, but particularly, the essence is to prevent them from, having certain infectious agents and also transmitting them to the partners. Likewise, many other things, including cleaning oneself after going to toilets, and also the ablution that the Muslims observe during before any prayer that they observe, and in the process, all routes of entry of microorganisms in the body are actually cleaned, and these are things that ensures that the Muslims at least 5 times a day are cleaned and free from microorganisms, even when they have entered into the nostrils or other things. the encouragement in the Islamic religion to bury dead bodies and ensure that these dead bodies are free, are made as early as possible, put away from the other people. So even if you don't know that they carry microorganisms, you actually observe these things and subconsciously having these microorganisms. So in essence, there are different scenarios in the religion that encourage or encourages cleanliness and encourages all forms of infection prevention and control, and also discourages anything that will harm any human being or animal, including the harms from microorganisms, as the case may be. And so from a broader perspective, the Islamic religion has this whole concept of being proactive. So in this context, if you look at the religion, there are many measures that are supposed to prevent someone from having any harm before the harm itself. Like this prophetic hadith, which he says we should benefit from 5 before 5, make use of 5 before 5. One of them is health before illness. So that means it is encouraging us to make sure that we utilize our health and we conserve it from getting distorted at any point. And the religion encourages avoidance of any forms of extravagance. So it might be like a form of extravagance if you have a means of preventing someone from harm from infectious agents, particularly in this context using immunization, and then you wait until that person is infected or affected and then to spend many more. So vaccine hesitancy in this context, I'm just trying to highlight some things, but the point I want to paint here, there are some write-ups, there are some publications or research works on vaccine hesitancy, but virtually most of them are from the Christian points. We have very few from the Islamic religion, and that the level of vaccine hesitancy, and also the fact that these vaccines, generally the contradictions or the misconceptions are also as a result of the gaps in terms of knowledge and communication. So because of this, we have an ongoing work on the issue of particularly awareness and knowledge or attitudes of religious scholars, Islamic religious scholars on vaccines and immunizations. And what we found out was that almost 90% of them agrees that Islam totally allows immunization. And very few of them says they are not sure, not because they feel it is not allowed, but because they feel there might be other conditions that may be associated with those immunizations that need to be met before it will be allowed. And so that is the reason why many of them believes that, yes, there is a kind of variations in understandings and disagreements on the basis of use of vaccines from the Islamic point of view. But that is not like to say that it is totally prohibited or is not allowed, but just differences in understandings which are normal even in the core religious acts in the Islamic religion. And so again, if you look at it, many of them, their personal status is that their personal belief on or vaccines is that it is allowed in certain conditions. But these conditions are not like anti-vaccine conditions, so to say, is that no, it has to be safe. It has to be that there is that indication and you have a benefit that you stand to gain by giving that, which no vaccine will pass without fulfilling those measures. And so in essence, if these ones were to be made, then everybody will agree that the Islamic religion allows for this vaccine. So, and the next is to look at the reasons why we have these misconceptions, which we know historically in Nigeria are not very common, from the polio vaccine to others that are there, and why do we have those things? So one of the major problems is the shallow knowledge of the religion itself from the context of modern, scenarios like the issue of vaccine. And then there is background lack of trust in government, lack of trust in the experts, and also the integrity. So people have this, reservations, and that is part of the contributory factor. And then there is poor communication between the religious scholars and those ones with deeper knowledge of these scientific aspects or concepts. And so, and even when that happens, usually the feedback is very weak. And sometimes you have some selfishness, poor regulations, because people talk without any regulation. And so that is part of what is contributing to these issues of misconceptions. And then there is exaggeration of vaccine adverse effects as against the benefits. So these are all things that are very clear and not necessarily from the religion itself. So it's like an apparent barrier, not a real one. And this is basically due to poor communication. So we can see that these are evidences from some works that have confirmed that you have some level of lack of trust, and you also have poor or lack of adequate local evidence-based information or data from our own environment. And that means we need to do more in this regard. So how do we bridge the gap to ensure that these problems actually do not continue to build and pile up? And so all benefits and, we need to gain from vaccines, we actually tap and make sure that we get the best out of them. One of them is to build that trust. Let us ensure that there is that trust in the science itself. And so that means you need to educate, you need to create awareness, and also ensure that there is trust in the system. The system should be, like transparent, and also the system must be in such a way that everything will be clear. And so the drivers or the people that are the healthcare workers or professionals or experts should also ensure that they build that trust between them and other members of the community, particularly in this case, adherents of specific or particular religion. And then we need to have that mutual respect. One of the barriers is such that it is because there is kind of like downgrading of certain groups of people, some of whom are actually very much influential in the religious context. And people tend to look down upon them and assume that they don't really have any stake in this regard. And so that makes them to go wild, and in some instances actually go against every concept that will come because they are not well respected. And so respecting them, or mutual respect for each other, and also communication, communicate. Let's make sure that we pass the information correctly, timely, and to the appropriate group of people in the most appropriate manner, such that they will accept and understand it, and will now be like an asset to us in the context of vaccine administration. And in this regard, we can only do that if we embrace that concept of multidisciplinary or joint activities in all forms of endeavors, including research and also our healthcare services generally. So if we do that, hopefully we can explore further, and most of these gaps and barriers will actually be addressed. So thank you very much, everybody, for this opportunity, and I hope we'll have more time during the discussion to address further issues. Thank you very much. Over.
Most definitely. Thank you very much, Professor Manga, for that enlightening presentation on the Islamic perspective and its intersectionality with immunization practices in Nigeria. Your presentation truly provides us with a deeper understanding of the opportunities that we have in promoting immunization within diverse communities. Thank you once again. For those of us that have questions and/or contributions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. The Q&A tab appears at the bottom of your Zoom screens. Now let's hear from the Christian viewpoint. We have with us Dr. Adeola Fowotade. She is a Christian practitioner, a consultant clinical virologist, and associate professor for the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. Dr. Fowotade, the floor is yours for your presentation. You have 15 minutes, please. Dr. Fowotade.
Hello. Can you see my slide, please?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon.
Yes, we can.
Depending on whichever part of the world you are joining this conversation from. I wish to thank Cafinet and Gavi for the privilege to be part of this important discussion. And I want to thank my colleague, Professor Mohamed Manga, for giving a broad overview of infection and infectious diseases and talking about how to break the chain of transmission. I will be speaking from the Christian perspective, as Professor Mohammed Manga has spoken exclusively on the Islamic perspective. I'm sure we would all agree that religion plays a very significant role in shaping various aspects of our health. And this is not just health alone, but even several aspects of what we do here in Nigeria and in most African countries. And Nigeria happens to be a country that has a diverse religious landscape. You have many religious groups, and then you even have many sub-denominations and denominations across these different religious groups that we have. And it's very important to note and to accept the fact that religion, whether we like it or not, has a very important role to play in a lot of health practices, including immunization. And this is not just complex, but has multifaceted perspectives. If you look at the image before you, it's the Christian denomination tree. And this is just one of the many that I found online. However, I prefer this because it seems to be more representative of the Christian landscape as we have at this moment. You can see how the early Christianity has evolved up onto what we have presently. And you can see how the Roman Catholic Church, for instance, has evolved to the Church of England, which gave birth to the Baptist, the Methodist, the Presbyterian, Congregational, and other sub-denominations, up down the ladder till we have the Pentecostal belief, where we have quite a number of worshippers nowadays, including the Redeemed Church, the Living Faith, and so many other ones like that. You can see how diverse this is, and that tells you that even as diverse as they are, they will have some similarities in their beliefs, while they would also have some differences in their belief. And we will be interested in how this impacts on vaccine advocacy and on childhood immunization. There are quite a number of myths and misconceptions that are related to immunization. Professor Manga spoke to a few of these, and this cuts across whether it's the Christian religion or the Muslim faith. It doesn't really matter. These are just some belief that some people have and have decided to hold on to very strongly. And it takes a lot of effort to be able to debunk some of these myths. Like, for instance, there's this belief that immunization is a Western plot to sterilize people from the southern part of the globe. And this affected polio immunization to a large extent. Likewise, there's also the belief that vaccines are harmful substances, and by taking them into your body, either through ingestion or through injection, it has a way of causing some harm to your body. And so because of this, some people will just not accept the vaccine or allow even their children or what to get vaccinated. However, if we go down in history to the church and vaccination, it's interesting to find that we've had the good, we've had the bad, and we've had the ugly. And of worthy notes, two people who have been on the positive side of history, Cotton Mather and Roland Hill, both are famous preachers. Cotton Mather, for instance, not just embraced the idea of concept of vaccination, but even went ahead to vaccinate himself, inoculate himself against smallpox, and also to inoculate some other members of his congregation. And as he moved from one place to the other, he kept preaching the gospel and also preaching that people need to get vaccinated to prevent them from spreading infectious diseases. Roland Hill was also a popular English preacher and a very close friend of Edward Jenner, who happens to be the father of immunization. And everywhere he went to, it was like a kind of nomadic preacher. He always encouraged the congregation to ensure that they get vaccinated. But just like we have those ones on the positive side of history, we also had those ones that have been on the negative side of history. Like there were quite a number of anti-vaxxers from the Protestant countries, like the Quakers, who are like a minority sect in England, and who stood, who were very much against vaccination in any form and were very expressive about that fact. Way back in 1931, the Jehovah's Witnesses also condemned the practice of vaccination. And this is because they believed that vaccination was a direct violation of the everlasting covenant that God had made with Noah after the flood. Thankfully, this was reversed much later in 1952. And in the course of preparing for this presentation, I was privileged to speak to some leadership of the Jehovah's Witnesses group. And it was good to note that at the moment, they accept the vaccination, and some of them also even showed evidence that their children and what had been vaccinated up to date. This now leads to the question, what does the Bible say? Of course, we know that the Bible is the tool that Christians hold on to and believe very much. And it's interesting to note that, yes, the scripture or the Bible does not say anything about vaccination. It neither speaks for nor against. And this is not surprising because the Bible, of course, precedes the time of evolution of the various vaccines that we have at the moment. However, some inferences can be made from some quotations that I've cited here from the Bible. Like, for instance, we have from the Old Testament, the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 4, and all vaccines are from the King James Version. It says, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." And that tells us that even though it looks like the Bible does not have anything to say about vaccination, the fact that the Bible alludes to the fact that knowledge will increase should also be a testimonial to the fact that one of such knowledge is the fact that we are going to have the evolution of these vaccines. They are going to be helping us to be able to break the chain of transmission. And there's really no reason why we should shy away from this new knowledge. Additionally, from the Old Testament, in the New Testament, the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 10, verses 23 to 24, it reads, "All things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. Let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth." And so this is trying to say that, yes, you can say you do not want to get vaccinated, but you should not always be concerned about yourself, but you should also be concerned about the needs of others. The fact that you get infected puts other people around you at risk. And so if you can break the chain of transmission by vaccinating yourself, you'll be helping the other people that are around you by helping them not to be exposed to the infections that you would carry. And so it should not be about self, but it should be about the general good, which is what vaccination promotes in terms of herd immunity. And there's another one again, still from the New Testament, the book of Mark, chapter 7, verses 14 to 15, which says, "And when he called all the people unto him, he said unto them, Hearken unto me, every one of you, and understand, there's nothing from without a man that entering into him can defile him. But the things which come out of him, those are they that defile him." This is also saying there's no need to worry about whatever you take in, whether vaccines that you take in orally or the ones that you take into your body by injection. These are not the things that will spoil you or defile you, but rather the things that will spoil or not edify a man are those things that come out of the man. And so these are all attestations to the fact that even though we do not have a direct statement saying take the vaccine, but if you read all this and put all this together, it at least pointing towards taking an important health behavior towards acceptance of immunization. And again, during the course of this presentation, I was privileged to speak to some religious leaders across different faiths in order to have their perspectives of what they believe. And this spanned the Catholic group, the Orthodox Protestants, and the Pentecostal group. And one thing that you would find is that there's a lot of similarity in the beliefs across these various groups on what immunization represents for them as Christians. Some of the ones that you have on top there that are not bolded, which are similar across boards, are some statements which I've quoted verbatim, like saying children are released to get immunized when the vaccinators come to the church and bring the vaccines. So they're happy to release the children to get vaccinated if they bring vaccines to the church for immunization. And then again, members are free to decide whatever they want, whether or not they want to get immunized. The church does not in any way stop them or discourage them. However, those ones that are below there in bold raise very key pertinent questions, which I think there's a need to tap into in order to be able to leverage religious leaders as for positive advocacy for vaccine acceptance. And that includes the fact that across board, they say that vaccination is not generally included in their medical outreach. And from time to time, they keep having this medical outreach where they speak to people about their health, where they distribute drugs and medicines, where they take blood pressure, run some tests. However, usually vaccination is not included in those kind of medical outreach. And one would wonder why this is so. Again, the church leadership does not preach on the need to immunize children. The church platforms sometimes are used for health promotion advocacy. However, across board, it was one thing that was obvious was that none of the church leadership was particularly placing emphasis on the need for childhood immunization. Again, when I wanted to know about whether or not there was a consensus or a policy that existed in the church with regards to childhood immunization, none of them was able to point to any such situation. And I think this is part of what we need to think about and reflect on very seriously. And so this takes us to how can we engage religious leaders as positive advocates for childhood immunization? It's very important, first and foremost, to provide accurate information to them, because they are usually like the first point of call for their church members who believe and trust in them very much. And so would ask them whether or not it is fine for them to accept the immunization, and would also come to them first if there's any need for them to dispel any myth or rumor or misconceptions that they have. So they could serve as positive advocates, encouraging their followers to get vaccinated, helping to dispel myths and rumors, providing accurate information, and also serving as role model or leaders by ensuring that their own children and wards get vaccinated, and using this as an example to encourage the church members to also follow suit. Additionally, religious leaders could help to draft religious messages that can be incorporated into immunization campaigns. And I believe that this would attract the very religious people to be interested if they know that acceptance of immunization has no negative impact on their religion. Additionally, they could also be leverage of funds to provide, promote vaccination alongside their other health and well-being programs, so that this serves as an avenue to also introduce these vaccines to children who ordinarily would not even come to the health center, but who would have access to these vaccines through the church organization. And it's also important that they provide moral and ethical guidance. This is very important because we know that for most members, they look up to their religious leaders for guidance, whether moral or ethical. And so if they are available to do this, this really would be very helpful. And then at the community level, the religious leaders have a key role again to play in community mobilization and engagement to provide and promote access to childhood immunization. Finally, understanding and addressing the intersection of religion and immunization is very essential for effectively combating vaccine hesitancy and achieving widespread immunization coverage. And religious leaders have a very crucial role to play in childhood vaccination advocacy, and we could leverage on their influence, their authority, and the trust that they enjoy within the communities. And that is why it was quite enlightening and quite heartwarming to see this message from the president of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Archbishop Oku, who in support for the HPV vaccine rollout said, and I quote, "As faith leaders, we lend our voice to the for the HPV vaccine and influence the positive change that is desired for a successful rollout of this vaccine." These are the kind of things we love to see, and we hope can be extended to all other childhood vaccines, and also sustained to ensure that all children have access to life-saving vaccines. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I will stop here, and I will take your comments and questions when we get to that section. Thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Fowotade, for that insightful presentation, especially highlighting the critical role of religious leaders in influencing health behaviors. Thank you very much once again. Moving on to our second theme for today, we'll discuss community engagement strategies for improving routine immunization coverage and reducing zero-dose children. We have insights from Dr. Nuruddin Aliyu, who is a field epidemiologist and coordinator for Sokoto State with the African Field Epidemiology Network, AFANET. Dr. Nuruddin, you're up next, and you have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to join this second webinar series of Zero Dose Learning Hub, discussing on community engagement strategies to reduce zero dose in Nigeria. So by way of introduction, vaccines have been pivotal in the prevention and control of many vaccine-preventable disease and infectious disease globally, saving millions of lives through routine vaccinations. And in 2019, globally, there were estimated 14.5 million zero-dose children, with 75% of this figure to be coming from 14 low.
Dr. Nuruddin.
Yes.
Dr. Nuruddin, so sorry to butt in, please. Could you press the presentation mode tab so that we could see the presentation better? You're not on presenter view right now.
Yes.
Dr. Nuruddin, please go ahead. We can see the presentation well.
Okay, good. Sorry for the little challenge. So by way of introduction, vaccines have been pivotal in the prevention and control of many infectious diseases globally, saving millions of lives through routine vaccination. And in 2019, there were an estimated 14.5 million zero-dose children, with 75% of these figures coming from 14 low and middle income countries, including Nigeria. And Nigeria accounts for second highest number of zero-dose globally, with over 2.2 million children across conflict zones, urban slums, and many other remote rural communities. The role of community engagement in enhancing immunization coverage is crucial for improving vaccination rates and ensuring that a larger proportion of population receive life-saving vaccines. So the role of community engagement. The role of community engagement in reducing zero-dose children include building trust and confidence. When immunization programs we involve the community members in the planning and implementation and monitoring of vaccine activities, will build trust and confidence in our communities. The second is increasing awareness and demand. And by engaging communities, health workers will find an avenue to discuss on the awareness, to discuss and raise awareness, and also discuss importance of immunizations, address any misconceptions, and encourage caregivers to seek vaccination for their children when the need arises. And we have addressing barriers. There are some barriers like lack of transportation, misinformation, or any cultural beliefs, which through community engagement activities, these barriers can be addressed. We are promoting accountability and sustainability. And by engaging community members, we'll try to build accountability and sustainability across both the supply and demand side of the routine immunization. So we'll be discussing on the named child community engagement strategy for routine immunization. This strategy was first piloted in Sokoto State before being scaled up to other states in Nigeria. We have the key stakeholders. These stakeholders include at the cell level, we have state community engagement focal person, We have State Community Engagement Working Group. We have Sultanate Council, and we have also partners that are supporting in community engagement activities. We have at the LGA level, we have LGA Community Engagement Focal Person. We have district heads, and at the ward level, we have Community Engagement Focal Person. We have village heads, settlement heads, and community mobilizers or other community resource groups. They are all stakeholders in the conduct of name-based community engagement strategies. And we have 3 key activities in the conduct of this community engagement. We have line listing, reconciliation, and defaulter tracking. These are the activities that are being conducted by these stakeholders in order to ensure that a child is left without being vaccinated. For line listing, it entails May Onguas write down the names of all children under 1 year, including all newborns in his community register. He ensures that all the newborns all the deliveries that are conducted in those in his community are captured in his register. And his register have variables like name, age, sex, phone number of the parent, and as well as also the immunization status of that child. And the expectation is that within 1 to 3 days, May Ongwa captures all newborns in this community register. They are line listed and referred to health facility for vaccination. For reconciliation, in reconciliation, the May Ongwa and the health worker is expected to meet at least once in a month to compare his line list with the child immunization register of the health facility for the identification of children that are not vaccinated or children that are partially vaccinated, so that he can refer them to the health facility, or he can refer them for he can identify them for tracking. The May Ongwa goes to the health facility or outreach session site for the conduct of reconciliation meeting together with the health worker. And the health worker sometimes may go to a particular location designated or agreed by the community, by the May Ongwa, so that they conduct the reconciliation meeting. In defaulter tracking, at the end of any reconciliation meeting, the May Ongwa identifies children from his register who are not on the child immunization register, including those that are partially vaccinated, so that they can be identified for tracking. And May Ongwa, together with any community volunteers or community mobilizer, go into the community to track and mobilize the partially vaccinated children and refer them back to the health facility or outreach site for immunization. This name-based strategy, or Name the Child, ensures a process of continuous validation and resolution of the vaccination status of every child within a community. It's a continuous process. Any delivery is listed, is being tracked to ensure that it's monitored, to ensure that he completes his vaccination that he is expected to receive. So we also have a RI demand generation project that was conducted by AFINA with support from the US CDC. We have a goal to increase routine immunization coverage at least 3 by 20% in targeted LGAs with low coverages by focusing on interventions to improve the uptake of immunization services. 9 LGAs out of 23 LGAs were selected based on data and based on low coverages by those LGAs. Activities that were delivered include capacity building of LGA immunization teams, capacity of RI health workers at the facility level, conduct of trainings to those workers in order to improve their capacity on service delivery, and also community engagement activities. Community stakeholders were also the building of the capacity of community stakeholders on vaccine demand and demand generation activities. There were also increasing linkage between the health facilities and communities through some of these activities I'm going to discuss. We have reactivation of what development committees. Some of the WDCs were not active, so they are made to be reactivated and ensure that they are meeting on a monthly basis. And we have monthly health facility and settlement reconciliation meetings through line listing and referral of defaulters or partially vaccinated to the health facility for vaccination. We have monthly town announcement for outreach sessions being conducted by town announcers. We have house-to-house mobilization and sensitization on benefit of immunization, and also discussion of RI schedule, as well as defaulter tracking by settlement heads, TBAs, voluntary community mobilizers, and other volunteers in the communities. Monitoring of IPC skills, and also direct engagement of health workers at the facility level. These are some of the achievements at the end of the project we have achieved in those LGS. We have regularized the WDC and health facility reconciliation meetings. We have the influence of what development committees, settlement heads, and other volunteers in community has greatly improved. And also improvement in stakeholders' capacity for defaulter tracking, routine immunizations, sensitizations, and the conduct of community dialogue, the capacity and technical know-how to improve the capacity of these stakeholders in order to resolve any issues with regard to non-compliance or no felt need with regard to routine immunizations. We have also improved mobilization of sessions by town announcers. We have improved attendance of community at RI sessions. And at the end of the project, we are able to track and vaccinate 36,314 identified defaulters out of 51,057 defaulters that were listed from the beginning to the end of the demand generation project in the state. And also 577 household heads have left a standing permission for immunization of their children in their absence, because sometimes the head of house, the women, will have to seek permissions before taking a child to a facility for routine immunization. But this speaker, 577, were able to left a standing permission, even in their absence, to allow their wives to go for routine immunization, to take their children for routine immunization services. So what are the roles and responsibilities of the major stakeholders? We have the Sultanate Council Committee on Health, which usually, together with the state community engagement working group, supervise and coordinates the conduct of orientation to district heads, so that district heads will also follow up with village heads. Villages will coordinate the affairs of Meonguos to ensure that each settlement or Meonguos conduct reconciliation, conduct line listing, reconciliation, and also defaulter tracking. He also give feedback to the village heads, and village head also at the end of every month give feedback to district heads, and district heads give feedback to the Sultanate Council Committee on Health, and the Sultanate Council Committee on Health also conduct quarterly review meeting to discuss on the challenges and the way forward if there are any issue, improvement, and the implementation of the strategy. The Meonguos have other resource groups, which are traditional barbers, religious leaders like imam and pastor. We have traditional birth attenders. These stakeholders support Meongua in the conduct of defaulter tracking and also line listing. Traditional barber, during the barbing of any newborn baby, he sensitizes the caregiver to go for facility for vaccination, and also inform Meongua so that he can list those new deliveries or newborn baby in his community register. So also religious leaders, also traditional birth attendants. So what are the challenges encountered? We have some challenges like lack of logistic support to Meonguos to conduct reconciliation meetings and other community mobilizers for sensitization and tracking of defaulters at the facility level. We have insecurity in some settlements. This limit reach for the conduct of either outreach sessions and by extension, the conduct of reconciliation meetings in those settlements with security concerns. We have also low commitment of some health workers in community engagement activities due to poor remunerations they receive on monthly basis. We also have suboptimal capacity of Meonguos in the conduct of reconciliation meetings, even despite the training, the capacity of some is not very encouraging to conduct the reconciliation meetings or to list and also ensure that defaulters are tracked back to the facility. We have also suboptimal capacity and attrition of scribes, because those Meonguos that cannot read or write, they are also advised to recruit scribes that will help them in listing any newborn in their settlement. So sometimes there are attrition of these scribes or capacity to conduct the needful. And lastly, we have non-compliance among some caregivers. Even after a successful listing, they are still non-compliant, still have no felt need to receive vaccinations or defaulter tracking. They are identified as defaulters, but still remain adamant or non-compliant to refer back to the facility for vaccination. In conclusion, community engagement is a cornerstone of successful immunization programs as it fosters trust, increased awareness and demand, and addresses barriers to access. And by actively involving communities in immunization activities, it promotes accountability and enhances program effectiveness and overall reduces zero-dose children in Nigeria. These are some photo galleries. We can see the first one. We're having orientation of Sultanate Council Committee on Health on the Name the Child Community Engagement Strategies. We have also the quarterly meeting of the Sultanate Council Committee on Health on Name-Based Community Engagement Strategy. We have supervision of reconciliation meetings. We have advocacy visit to districts to conduct sensitization and advocacy on community demand generation activities, sensitization of settlement, head of households to generate demand for routine immunization activities. And thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nuruddin, for your informative presentation. Thank you for sharing those insightful community engagement strategies for improving routine immunization coverage. Indeed, that was a detailed exploration of the ways to effectively engage communities. We appreciate your thorough analysis and valuable information. In fact, that goes to all our three presenters for today. This knowledge that you've shared with us will certainly contribute to our efforts in improving routine immunization coverage and health outcomes in Nigeria. Now we'll open the floor for sharing sessions, for your questions, your contributions. If anyone has a question or a contribution, please type it in the Q&A box. For those that have experiences to share, please raise your hands, your virtual hands, and I will call you in turn. And I will. All right, I see Ajiji. Please, your question or contribution, please.
Okay. Thank you so much for the one that did so well and was so impactful because I learned to just share my experience on the religious aspect of vaccination. I've worked for quite some time, over 10 years in Bauchi State. And what I noticed, especially, let me talk from the Christian background, in churches, when we have polio immunizations, we do have these special teams that visit churches. So during this immunization, most times, if the church is being notified that there's a vaccination team outside so that the eligible children could get vaccinated, they send in the representative checks, and once they see the dressing of the people and they associate them to a particular religion, it religion is represented and being sent to them. Also, they sometimes resist if there's no pre-notification, like sending letters to inform them a minimum of like 1 week, notify them that there will be church immunization on a particular date. By this time, the team will be there. So this is part of my experience. Most times what we do is we tend to see if it is possible that the church team are coming from the religion that is at. Mix the people up so that you have people, because even from the way you appear, it will just say it, where do you belong to. So that's just mine. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Stephanie, for that experience, for sharing that experience with us. Indeed, it is necessary to be culturally appropriate and religious wise. Next, we have Abdullahi Muhammad Idi. Please, your contribution.
Thank you for
Mr. Abdullahi?
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you for this opportunity. And I want to appreciate all the presenters. And while I appreciate all the presenters, I want to direct some of my challenges to the first presenter as presented regarding Islamic religion with immunization or with vaccines. And this is from my point of experience. Every verse he has quoted so far is very relevant to the religion, though with challenges. And these are some of the challenges that we observe on the field, be it zero dose or routine immunization. We've come to observe that there's an issue of conflict of faiths. Even as a Muslim, you find out that there are several faiths. So if a lot will be given to addressing this issue, I think we will have more coverage than what we are having today, because that is going to help in building more trust and the confidence. And what I'm trying to say here is we have conventional and non-conventional preachers. And our major problem so far as religion is concerned, which is Islam, the issue still lays with the non-conventional preachers. And they have contributed almost to the 90% of those people that are resistant or hesitant or have misconception regarding vaccines and immunization. That is one point. And another point I want to also raise is issue of religious politics. We tend to always forget that there's politics among religion. And that also have to be linked with the conventional and the non-conventional preachers issue. And another issue of concern is the issue of Western dominance or influence when it comes to vaccine production. Most of the time, those non-conventional preachers are hesitant and they tend to keep a blind ear as well as a blind eye to all other issues. They can go as far as trying to change the narrative of what the religion provides. So I want to see a situation whereby we could encompass all these things into a streamline where we could do more work, because addressing these issues I have raised so far is going to help a great deal in immunizing most of those people that are hesitant when it comes to vaccines, routine immunization, zero-dose immunization, all forms of immunizations. Thank you and over. These are from my experiences and my contribution.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullahi, for sharing that with us. Up next, I have a question here from Kabiru Ibrahim for Dr. Adeola Fowotade. The question goes like this: why do religious leaders not speak on the need for immunization of children? I repeat, why do religious leaders not speak on the need for immunization of children? Dr. Fowotade.
Okay, thank you for that question. And I think there are many reasons why that would be so. There's a possibility that there's some fear of offending people's sensibilities, especially because the church does not have a policy that dictates that it has to be so. And so the religious leader of a particular group might feel that if it comes out openly to speak for immunization, it might be offending the sensibilities of the anti-vaxxers, who are also likely to be part of the congregation. And then again, it might also be because there's probably no obvious benefits to the church. Maybe the church does not feel like it's being carried along, or it's a part of planning or the immunization program as it is. And so they feel more comfortable staying within their comfort zone, and rather than getting involved directly with something that they are probably not very knowledgeable about, or that they do not have absolute control over. So it's really different reasons. And I think it's a good idea to be able to tease this out further by asking across the different religious groups to try to have an understanding of why this is so. because I believe that this is a very important point that can be leveraged upon to improve advocacy for childhood immunization. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fowatade, for that response. Up next, I see Bala Sokwa. Bala Sokwa, I see your hands raised. Please, your contribution.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Mine is to ask. I want to believe, well, I've been in immunization activities since year 2002 as a team member. So may I know why vaccines are not yet developed in Nigeria, even after so many years of the advent of vaccines? Because some of the fears of this non-compliance are as a result of maybe untrust of where these vaccines are coming from or how it was being manufactured. So why is Nigeria not able to produce vaccine even up to now? Why are vaccines not being produced, yes, in Nigeria, so as to enable our people to understand or feel that, yes, their own is in charge? That is my question.
Thank you so much for that excellent question. It's actually a question that has been bothering almost all of us. But then there are several perspectives to that when you look at it. In the 70s, even in the early 80s, we used to manufacture vaccines, specifically animal and some form of human vaccine, in the Veterinary Research Institute in Bonn. But then along the way, just like the infrastructural decay that we have across systems, that vaccine manufacturing action stopped. But then when you look at it, it's not the actual focus or the theme of this webinar. Even though the point is good, but then along the webinar series, we'll have a day dedicated whereby we'll discuss issues around vaccine manufacturing and also vaccine procurement, specifically for Nigeria. So I want to defer you to that series, and then also know that there are current efforts ongoing to kickstart the vaccine manufacturing process, which has been in the jet lag. A specific example is the Africa CDC Vaccine Initiative, which also there is a presidential initiative to relaunch this. Also a member of the committee where we partner with 3 institutions, the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, the Veterinary Research Institute, and also the Sokoto. We have a grant from EFON, and we are trying to kickstart interest in this vaccine manufacturing. So we are not right, but I want to defer full discussion on that to the subsequent webinar series.
Thank you, Dr. Yahaya, for that explanation. It was a little bit out of context, but then thank you very much for that. Up next, we have Nura Mohammed Goronio. Your contribution, please. Nura Mohammed, can you hear me? Your contribution, please, Nura. It seems you're still muted. All right, let's move on to the next person, Awal Hussaini. Your contribution, please. Please speak. It seems you're unmuted. Please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So thank you all for the nice presentation. My question goes to Dr. Nuruddin. With regards to reconciliation meeting, does it occur only at the health facility level, or does it happen even at the outreach site? And if it does, how is it done? Thank you, sir. Secondly, I have a question for on outreach site. Why is it that outreach sessions is not being conducted in churches and mosques? Thank you, and over.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Nura. We can start with Dr. Nuruddin, please, to respond to the questions, and then Dr. Fawotade.
Okay, thank you, Nura, for this question. The reconciliation meeting is not conducted only at the health facility level, but rather even at the outreach sites is also conducted. The health worker meets with the community leader or the Meongwa, which is registered at the facility level or the designated location of the conduct of outreach, so that you reconcile with the community health facility child immunization register. How it is done is that the reconciliation meeting happens between the Meongwa and also the health worker or service provider. He look at his community register. Are there names of under one children that are captured in the health facility register that are not inside his own register? That's one. Or vice versa. Are there children that are captured in his child register, in his community register, but not captured on the health facility child immunization register? So in either way, he should also confirm the status of vaccinations. If he has the ones that are within his community register, but they have not reported the possibility of vaccination, he should ensure that those eligible children are tracked and referred back to health facility for vaccination. And if there are also others, if there are children like listed in the child immunization register, not inside his own, he should be able to also update his line list and also ensure that those children are also fully vaccinated and tracked accordingly. So these are the benefits of the community reconciliation meetings at the community level. So reconciliations also do occur at the outreach sites. Thank you. I'm over.
Thank you, Dr. Nuruddin. Dr. Fawotade, your response, please.
Sorry, I think I missed the question because I was busy responding to the questions in the Q&A. Do you mind taking the question again, please? Hello?
Mr. Nura, please go ahead and ask your question once again for Dr. Fawotade. Dr. Manga would also respond to this question. Mr. Nura. The question was actually around why vaccination is not included in routine church outreach programs and campaigns. I think that applies to both churches and mosques, or both the Islamic and Christian perspectives. Why is vaccination not included in their routine activities or outreach programs and campaigns?
Okay, thank you. I think one of the reasons would be the fact that the vaccines might not be readily accessible to the church health campaign organizers. So for them, they do other things like distribution of medicines, vitamins. Sometimes they do some basic tests like checking for fasting blood sugar, urinalysis, and other low-hanging health interventions that they could do. But for them, I think having access to the vaccine might be something that is a bit out of their reach. And that might be part of the reasons why it is not usually considered. And then again, I think this also points to the fact that the religious bodies or the churches might not be working closely with either the local government's PHCDA that could have provided access to those kind of opportunities. And so I see it as maybe on some parts, ignorance or not knowing how to be able to access this opportunity, and then not also knowing who to contact to make that a part of their programs. So I don't think it is that they don't want to do it, but I think it is because they do not know how to go about it. They do not know who to speak with that could help them to facilitate it. And that might be the reason why it is not usually part of the program for the church health campaign or medical outreach. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Fowotade. Dr. Manga, would you like to give us a little expose on the Islamic perspective, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I have some few questions. One of them I saw in the Q&A and somehow it disappeared without me attending to it. So let me just hurriedly run through some of them. One, the issue of, conflicts of faiths that someone raised. The fact that we have differences in opinions or in understandings across different groups, and also the interplay between conventional and non-conventional, and also the politics of religion or politics in religion and influence of Western or dominance. So I think I will lump up all these things, again, referring back to my last slide, the issue of trust, the issue of mutual respect, and the issue of communication. Because most of these things, and also maybe some of areas where I made reference to ego, and also the fact that we downplay and look down upon some other people thinking that they are not important, and in the process they negatively react, and that forms like part of the anti-vaccine activities. So if we are to address most of these things, the key things are still making sure that we properly communicate to those people, because they don't have, a common grounds where they have the right information for them to understand. So with that proper communication and also giving them that respect, I think we'll not have much issues. And the other issue to do with politics in religion, I don't think it's restricted to only vaccine or immunization. So these are conceptual issues that are universal. And if we have to address them, it will be like a holistic thing from a multidisciplinary perspective, and not only restricted to vaccine, because they are equally not restricted to vaccines or immunizations generally. So the one question that was asked is the inclusion or perceived inclusion or utilization of some aspects, as in some components of the vaccine, from unlawful things in the Islamic perspective, from the Islamic sign or pigs or monkeys and others that form a component of some of these vaccines. Now, the clear-cut injunction in the Islamic religion is you cannot consume those things. And if there is any way you can use anything that is lawful and replace the one that is unlawful, then you have to put in all efforts to ensure that you have done that. But in a situation where you absolutely don't have any alternative, and that can be the only thing to be used, then it might be allowed, even though some Islamic scholars will say that there is nothing that is in form of medication that God has not provided from among those things that are lawful. So you are not allowed to use those ones that are unlawful. But in the same context, you have others that will agree that if you are left with no option, then this necessity will make those things that are unlawful to be lawful. Like someone that is in the middle of the desert and does not have any food or drink and is about to die, and he sees, a dead body of a dead carcass of an animal, and he is not in normal situations allowed to take that, he can still take that because of that necessity. But these are all things that, like I said, you have variations in opinions, and if there is a way you dispel those differences by making sure that you disambiguate and bring those things that are very clear, I think it will be sorted out. Another question that came was the issue of, okay, so maybe I will have to stop here and others can still respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manga. Thank you very much for those contributions from you. Up next, we have Dr. Hassan Shuaibu. Please, sir, your...
Good afternoon. I want to appreciate the presenters of this webinar series and the organizers. My name is Dr. Hassan Shuaibu Musa. I am the Bauchi State African Health Budget Network focal lead in the implementation of Zero Dose Learning Hub. I want to comment about the challenges of zero dose that have been identified thus far in my state. First, like you rightly know, we have myths, misinformation, and disinformation regarding the uptake of routine immunization in our community. We have the role of culture and religion that poses as a barrier to the uptake of routine immunization, thus compromising universal immunization coverage achievement. In my state, out of the 20 local governments, we have 13 that are zero-dose local government. And as such, you want to agree with me that stakeholders really need to connect the dots, identify the gaps, advocate, and have a very strong mechanism for community engagement such that the poor budgetary funding, the lack of budgetary release, the mechanisms that will ensure accountability framework is actually adopted with a view to making sure that we support and reach out to all zero-dose children across the state. One of the speakers talked about the concept of One Health, where multi-stakeholders are actually integrated to talk about and improve healthcare outcome through health, environmental, and perhaps human promotion of now you want to and have so much on the need for religious leaders and other stakeholders to do more on religious barrier and cultural issues that undermine the uptake of routine immunization. And this is what we have been doing. And I want to say that it's a continuous, perhaps, work that all stakeholders need to come on board. At the slightest opportunity, we advocate, we engage, and we make sure that we promote and support partners, stakeholders, government officials, and even community leaders. So these are my contributions, and I want to say that it has not been easy. A seminar like this has broadly widened my scope over so many issues directly and indirectly affect immunization and zero-dose challenges. Partly what we may have as the challenge also vaccine logistics, administration, accountability, supervision and team selection, deployment of outreach teams and mobile teams are other issues to look at. All this, we hope in the subsequent series, they will be categorized and they will be explored upon, just like justice has been done to the religious concept. I thank the organizers of this, and I thank stakeholders who are implementing zero-dose learning hub in the country. I appreciate you most sincerely.
Thank you to Dr. Shuaibu. Thank you for your contribution, sir. Next, Yahya Saminu, your contributions, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for this elaborate presentation. I want to attest to the fact that I benefited a lot from the discussions that took place so far. I just want to draw our attention to the fact that we are in the era of social media. And I have a personal experience. Just recently, somebody sent some voice notes on WhatsApp. One of those anti-vaxxers talking really hard about the ill effect of vaccines and what have you. So what I want to say is part of the strategies that should be employed in encouraging people to take up vaccination is this issue of social media platforms. I want to suggest that the AFNet as well as other stakeholders should look into that and find a way of educating people as well on social media platforms. And then as we discuss about the religious institutions, I think it will be important as we are getting religious leaders on board in this issue of vaccination, we get them also to speak directly, especially most of them have social media presence. They talk about some of these things so that most of the people, especially the young people that are on social media, will get to know the correct perspective of vaccination. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yahya Saminu. Raymond Dankoli, please unmute yourself and share your contribution, sir.
Right, so let me join others to also appreciate the presenters and the organizers for this excellent work. Just to avoid costly assumption, I will appreciate if I can be educated with the definition of what zero dose is. I just want to clear some doubt. That's number one. The second thing, it's about knowledge and attitude. To a large extent, most people are very much knowledgeable about what the religion says about vaccination to a large extent. But the challenge has always been around attitude towards the vaccination itself. So for me, there seems to be a wide gap between knowledge and then the attitude of people towards accepting vaccination. To Professor Manga, my friend and colleague, and also the others who talked about religion, I will appreciate what do we do to actually narrow this gap between the knowledge, which most people seem to have, and then the actual attitude accepting vaccination. And are there studies that actually shows people, what is the relationship between people who are knowledgeable and are refusing vaccination, and then people who are not knowledgeable at all about what the religion is saying and then are not accepting vaccination? If there are such studies, I will appreciate if they can share with us. Thank you and over.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond Dankoli, a colleague, a senior partner in this immunization business, a co-fellow graduate. We are happy to hear your voice again. I will start by responding to. We are using the Gavi operational definition for zero dose, which define it as any child that has not received the first dose. Case is Penta 1. We also have a consensus paper from the last we had from Uganda, which we agree that even though the definition shows person one, which we know is given as 6 weeks, we could not call the child him a month later. We give an adjustment of 4. There might be some issues for which the child didn't have reached. And we define this child as on all the assessment that is ongoing for the zero dose learning hub country. Also, give the operation definition for other immunized. The third dose of Penta 3, or the BCG, the DPT 3, and of course, is given to the technical issue for the definitions. And then I will allow my colleagues to respond for the other questions.
We'll start the responses with Professor Manga, please.
Okay, thank you very much. And once again, thank you, Dr. Dankoli, a very senior colleague and a friend from the same side of this country. So the issue of knowledge and attitude, I think it's something that it's very clear to all of us that many people have the knowledge, many people, have the ideas, but the attitudes, are still the problem. So why do we still continue to have these gaps? I think this is what he asked, and also if we have some studies or some experiences from that perspective. Well, personally, I would say the issue is still inadequate communication. It's still inadequate communication with those people, and with a background lack of trust in both the people that have the knowledge and also the system that operates, the healthcare delivery generally. So if we have to reduce this gap, as highlighted, the first is to ensure that this proper and correct, unadulterated information is given to those people such that they have the real perspective. And then those myths or those misconceptions, then those ones that have other things like the ego, like the like wrong perceptions of the whole issue of prioritizing some vaccines for some ulterior motives and ignoring some other things that are equally more important, is all about getting the right information and appropriately passing it across. And I want to use this to also highlight the fact that in the few studies I have seen, you realize that most of the write-ups, most of the research works actually from the Christian perspective. And that is partly the reason why you have more of this problem from the Islamic perspective, despite the fact that we have all the evidences, all the verses in the religion that are in tandem with the science and healthcare delivery generally. So if we can have more of such research works, like I said, we are still making efforts to ensure that we have many of these things. This survey that I shared, which is an ongoing one, is exclusively among religious scholars. And we can see the dynamics in their understandings and the differences. And we hope to dig further, having some additional research works, focus group discussions, in-depth interviews, so that we'll have better understanding and at least come up with these gaps clearly, and also identify some solutions that they themselves might have proffered. And if we can do that, then I think we can clarify and also make the arena better for more activities and more efforts that will eventually bridge the gaps generally. So these are my views on this, and I hope we'll continue to work together to improve the situation. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Dr. Manga. Up next, Dr. Fawatade, your response to Mr. Raymond Dankoli's question, please.
Thank you very much. And I also want to toe the line of Professor Manga to say that it all still boils down to lack of education, essentially. However, it's interesting to note the gap between knowledge and attitude. And sometimes in some studies, some of the ones that have been cited in this presentation, you would find that even though it looks like the knowledge is very high, when it comes to attitude or acceptance or even practice, you would find that there's a disconnect between knowledge and attitude as well as practice. And most times, this tells you that these components that we describe as knowledge also has its depth. And if it looks like there's some peripheral knowledge that does not allow for understanding of the mechanism of the possibilities that could occur, or that still harbors some fear in the background, that to a large extent is still going to limit the attitude or even the practice of people towards health behaviors, including immunization. So I think it all still comes down to the fact that there's still a need for a lot of engagement, a lot of advocacy, a lot of education, training and retraining, stakeholders buying to ensure that people take ownership of some of these initiatives, including childhood immunization. And that is the only way that this knowledge that is being displayed can actually drive the attitude and also ultimately lead to improved health outcome. Otherwise, it looks like there's some knowledge, but in actual fact, the depth of the knowledge is shallow and is not sufficient to be able to drive an appropriate attitude or an appropriate response. That it can also even be inferred from what happened with the latest immunization that we had brought into the country, which is a human papillomavirus vaccine. As soon as the vaccines came in, by 3-4 days afterwards, there were a lot of videos from anti-vaxxers online being shared on social media, WhatsApp particularly, discouraging people from taking the vaccines, telling them how the use of the vaccine could lead to sterility and so on and so forth. So even for people that are in quotes knowledgeable, that led to a kind of pushback, because to an extent they are on seeing some of those myths and misconceptions. They also became worried about the long-term effects of some of these vaccines. And even despite the fact that these are people that you refer to as being knowledgeable, they are very well literate. And if you probably ask them, do a survey to assess their knowledge about the vaccine, about the virus, about the mechanisms of prevention, you would find that they are actually very knowledgeable. But when it comes to attitude, several other reasons like fear, myths, and misconceptions are also there that kind of drive people's attitude and prevent them from taking the appropriate health response as you would expect. So I think it's important to ensure that a lot more work is done to go beyond even assessing people's knowledge base, but to help them to properly understand and be able to make appropriate decisions when it comes to acceptance or even their own further engagement of others on whether or not to accept the vaccines or take any other health behavior. There is need for a lot of advocacy in that regard. Over.
Thank you. Contribution. Thank you for responding to that question. And with of these engaging and stimulating discussions, thank you for active participation. Up next, I'd like to call upon Dr. Aminu Magashi of the Africa Health Budget Network. She's a distinguished leader in public health advocacy, health outcomes in Africa. Dr. Magashi.
Thank you very much. Hope you can hear me well.
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. So I have the simplest job among all the speakers. Mine is to provide a closing remark and a vote of thanks. And it is our sincere pleasure and appreciation to see that this webinar has been very engaging and stimulating a discussion. One of the best webinars so far in terms of bringing different stakeholders and different opinion shapers across immunization space. We had a very good discussion around different themes: religion and immunization in Nigeria, myth and realities, and excellent two speakers talking about Islamic and the Christian perspective, providing a very stimulating conversation. So we have to thank sincerely and profusely Professor Muhammad Manga that shared the Muslim perspective, Islamic perspective, and Dr. Adiola Fortade, who shared the Christian angle. They are not only talking about the religious perspective, they are also expert in the field of immunization. So that has made the own conversation very rich, because they are bringing both the religious and also the scientific aspect of the immunization. Especially both of them are microbiologists and virologists respectively. So we really thank them very well for participating and also for responding to a lot of questions raised by the esteemed participants of the webinar. We also had the second team, which is on community engagement strategies for improving routine immunization coverage and reducing the zero-dose children. And our friend and colleague from Sokoto, Dr. Nuruddin Aliyu from Afinet, provided a strong perspective regarding the community engagement strategies that will also support immunization and the zero dose. So you agree with me that these have been very good conversations that took place. And also we have to thank Afinet for leading the introduction and also bringing the IT team to support us throughout this webinar. Dr. Haya, who is the project director of the Zero Dose Learning Hub, and all the entire Afinet team, and also the Gavi, who put the resources for this meeting. Our backstopper in Gavi Hedi Reynolds, and also the moderator of this meeting, and everybody that has joined. So we appreciate that participation, and we look forward to the next webinar and the next topics, and also already looking forward to the presenters. Somebody has raised question on local vaccine production, which I believe subsequently it may not be the next one, but I want to believe that the Zero Dose Learning Hub team may likely organize some webinar in the future that will also bring that perspective as a presentation to trash out the opportunities and the challenges to ensure the local vaccine production and many other related immunization issues. So with this notes, let me say thank you very much for the opportunity for me to give this closing remark and also a vote of thanks. And we look forward to the next seminar. And everybody, we wish you, all the best for the remaining part of the day and also the remaining week. Thank you very much, and over. Thank you.
Very much for this. On behalf of the Zero, express our sincere gratitude to each and every one of you for your active participation. Most for today, Dr. Tade and Dr. Nuruddin Ali, your research and your insight have been truly enlightening, shedding themes around immunization, and really excited about our discussions today. We're not meant to stay confined within virtual walls. Implement them in our respective spheres and continue striving towards better health outcomes. Polls came up, and I'm sure all of you have taken the polls. Just take a moment, a better idea on how to make our webinars more interactive. Thank you once again to our speakers, organizers, attendees for making this webinar a success. Let's stay connected, keep the dialogue going, and work together towards a healthier, more resilient future. With a warm farewell. Until next time, stay safe and take care.